This weekend marks a year since Kate's much heralded return from wherever she was. While public curiosity may have peaked, the questions remain unanswered and perhaps destined to outlive these people themselves. The interactions between the Waleses were exactly what we've come to expect. Brittle, performative, and devoid of warmth. Kate, ever the consummate actress, wore her usual mask of polished perfection, a thin veil over what appears to be a marriage under siege and a royal position growing more precarious by the day. William and Kate, Charles and Camilla, united in staging the fiction of familial harmony for an increasingly unconvinced public. And as for the crowd, a shadow of the turnout seen under Queen Elizabeth. No doubt a thorn in Charles's side, having spent the better part of a century rehearsing for a role that by the time he got it, no one seemed terribly interested in watching. Camilla, meanwhile, appeared with a face so immobile it might as well have been carved from a block of granite. And as for the much-touted balcony moment, it was tepid at best. Half the family was either missing in action or had unforeseen scheduling conflicts. The mood on the ground seemed to echo the sentiment, what exactly is the purpose of these people? Across the Atlantic, a parallel farce was unfolding, with Trump celebrating his own birthday with a military parade that featured squeaky tanks and bewildered bystanders. We seem to have arrived at a strange crossroads in history where royalty and autocracy are paraded before us with equal absurdity. Last year, all eyes were on Kate for obvious reasons. Her return had the eerie aura of a spectral sighting, but now, having re-emerged just in time for Wimbledon, the novelty has worn off. The press, ever in need of a distraction to justify the pageantry of watching a joyless family wave from a balcony while burning through taxpayer money, needed a new headline act. Prince Harry. Despite the fact that Prince Harry has made it abundantly clear that he is not coming back, the British press seem to be suffering from abandonment issues. They breathlessly speculated over whether or not he was going to appear, which they'll later declare with mock indignation that Harry was snubbed. It's honestly become a joke. They can't sell their papers without invoking the Sussexes. Last year's Trooping the Colour was Kate's grand return, but that drama has expired. So as expected, the media retreats to its old reliable roll out the Harry headlines. They just can't help themselves. And speaking of the press, the PR wars are in full force, with the British press working overtime to keep up appearances. It's becoming harder to ignore what's really going on. William and Kate are likely separated, and the media circus trying to cover that up is becoming more unhinged by the day. This week, the Telegraph dropped a quiet bombshell echoing what we've known for years, that William and Kate have little interest in the weighty responsibility fate has assigned to them. Well, at least to William. Kate's role, on the other hand, is increasingly being questioned by the public. Earlier this week, she showed up unannounced to a visit at a museum where she struggled to show interest in a number of artworks affirming her newfound love of nature. They're trying really hard to push this new persona, folks. Kate the naturalist, who can be seen here shooting birds out of the sky, an aristocratic tradition, of course, that must take priority over any other ephemeral passions that may pop up from time to time. The palace called it a work engagement, but not before the press preemptively announced that she wouldn't be wearing her engagement ring as a sign of commitment to William. Let me get this straight. She's not wearing the iconic sapphire Diana ring, and that's supposed to reaffirm her marriage? You can't make this stuff up, folks. What is clear is that there is a simmering power struggle taking place behind the scenes. A power struggle between whom, you might ask? Well, for one, Charles, and by extension Camilla, are not too happy with the heir apparent's paltry work engagements and lackadaisical attitudes toward work. He had to practically order William to attend the Pope's funeral. And as for Kate, according to this piece, she's long been considered a part-time royal, and this is before her alleged C-word diagnosis, which itself is shady. In any case, Kensington Palace has been very deliberate in letting us know that Kate's fine now. So what is the deal with her? Why does it seem like she's just a visiting distant relative who also happens to be the mother of the heir? They can't take that away from her. A couple weeks ago, she showed up for a much touted christening of a ship. And folks, I just had to ask myself, what century are these people living in? Are these the same folks they've been telling us are going to modernize the monarchy? It's like they're stuck on some Gilded Age timeline. There was a time before the big disappearance when Kate seemed to be gaining a foothold in her role as future queen. She was more popular than William and certainly more so than Camilla, but it seems, at least to me, that ever since whatever it was that happened at the end of 2023, she's been severely limited in any kind of independent self-expression. Yes, she's always towed the line. Carol made it clear. Keep your eye on the prize. But there was a time when she seemed to be bucking the system a bit. Not anymore. Now she just looks defeated. Something is going on. And folks, I'm wondering if they're even still married at this point. I'm serious. I'll never forget the strange headlines that came out in the early parts of 2024 when the British press seemed to be rebranding William as a solo dad. It felt like the soft launch of a separation announcement, kind of like testing out the waters to see how the public would react. Well, as we all know, the public reacted with alarm. Each day, Kate's absence reminded the public about what happens to women in the royal family who've outlived their usefulness. Women who inevitably end up sidelined, silenced, or erased. They ham-handedly claim that she was in the hospital after undergoing surgery, and this may have been true, folks, but when there's one lie, there's always many more where it came from. Because during the time that Kate was allegedly in that London clinic, not a single member of her birth family came to visit. William made one visit the entire time, and Charles, who was also admitted there, was the only one seen coming out. Folks started wondering if she was ever there at all. It was like the Eagles song, Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. Then we all know what happened after. All over the internet streets, it was #WhereIsKate. Now, I don't think they anticipated that the public would react in the way that they did. And that's when the cancer story was cooked up to explain away all the weirdness we all witnessed. Oh, but not before the British press tried to gaslight us into believing that none of this was weird at all. It was us. We were bullying the princess, they said. We forced her to reveal her diagnosis, which she was hiding from her children. And now you meanies went and ruined everything. When all else fails, folks, use the children as human shields. And as you know, I'm not convinced that it was Kate sitting on that bench that seemed to defy all rules of perspective in that strange, motionless background existing only in some realm of the digital universe. But we've already discussed that. And now that she's back, it's fairly apparent that there are several power struggles taking place between Kate and William, William and Charles, William and the Middletons, i.e. Carol, and Charles and the Middletons. Confused? Well, don't blame me, blame the press. A couple weeks ago, these strange stories kept emerging about Charles's imminent demise, followed by William and Kate's imminent ascent to the throne. One outlet pushed back, stating that Charles will succumb with cancer rather than from cancer. In other words, hold your horses, Mr. and Mrs. Wales. You better put away that tape measure because Charles isn't going anywhere. This is no doubt Camilla's move on this PR chessboard, and it seemed to be in direct response to an odd piece about Kate being crowned queen in some secret ceremony? The article read like a LinkedIn profile for a royal position, stating, "The future queen has always followed the rules and managed to avoid the pitfalls that plagued other royal women like the late Princess Diana." How dare these people? Neither Kate nor Camilla could ever fill the late Princess Diana's shoes. Now, I've noticed for some time now that there has been a concerted effort to attempt to rewrite Diana's story, in effect, recasting her as some kind of vixen with loose morals with all her lovers, while Camilla and Kate are just these virtuous keepers of the sacred crown. What a load of shite! When it came to authenticity and duty, no one to this day has matched the impact Diana has had on the world. Her work was not just some performative ribbon cutting or ship naming. She went out and risked her life. She also destigmatized a disease that people thought at the time you could catch just by touching the person afflicted with it. I did a video on this a while back. You folks should check it out. And as much as I sympathize with whatever abuse Kate has experienced with a perpetually incandescent William, when it comes to Diana, there is simply no comparison. We started to see flashes of Diana in Harry's charitable work, and so he had to be excommunicated because nobody, and I mean nobody, outshines the heir. Last week, following Harry's surprise Shanghai trip as co-founder of Travelist, where he promoted sustainable travel, William flew solo to Monaco for what was supposed to be a high-profile speech on protecting the oceans. The press wasted no time anointing him as statesmanlike and ready to be king. But if you blinked, you missed it. The speech landed with a thud. It barely trended. And most of the media conversation was wrapped up in a 4-year-old video posted by Meghan to celebrate her daughter's 4th birthday. The now infamous Baby Mama Dance, a light-hearted video Meghan shared during her pregnancy with Lilibet, rocked this little island nation to the core. There was a blitz of headlines taking precedence over every other issue. Commenters and columnists clutched their pearls about decorum and protocol, and of course the press couldn't resist dragging Kate into it with statements like, "Kate would never," as if we've all suddenly forgotten about Kate's colorful past. Then they brought in the reinforcements. Without any real connection, they claimed Meghan is struggling to be an influencer. Ironically, they insist Meghan has no significant influence, but they must mention her name in order to generate clicks. The read insinuates that Meghan's work is superficial, sending Instagram pots of jam while Sophie meets survivors of grape and visits conflict zones. Meanwhile, household frontliners like Camilla and Kate, whose work is often ceremonial, avoid any such scrutiny. Camilla is now simply referred to as the Queen, with never a negative utterance attached to her name, while Kate is congratulated for wearing heels. Besides, why is Sophie being elevated to contrast Meghan, who left the royal family 5 years ago? The Meghan bashing machine remains in full swing because it serves a purpose: to distract from the chaos happening inside the House of Windsor. The press likes to prop up Sophie as the quintessentially loyal family member, but what they would like the public to forget is Sophie's misadventure some 2 decades ago. In April 2001, a News of the World undercover sheikh managed to trap Sophie, then Countess of Wessex, in a hotel sting at the Dorchester. What was meant to be a business meeting quickly spiraled into a public relations disaster when secret recordings revealed Sophie casually criticizing high-profile politicians and royals, including the Queen herself. On tape, she mockingly referred to the Queen as the old dear, and she even suggested that Prince Charles was too old and too stuffy to become a modern king and lacked the charisma of his son William. So it looks like she's always kinda had a thing for William. Now she believes she was pitching her PR firm to a wealthy Arab sheikh who was actually an undercover reporter. She boasted that she and Prince Edward had influence over government ministers and could help open doors for clients, implying access for hire. The scandal fueled allegations that Sophie was commercializing her royal title. Massive media backlash followed. Sophie and Edward were forced to give a damage control interview, denying many of the quotes and claiming that context was lost. Sophie resigned from her PR firm just 2 weeks later, essentially ending her commercial career. This event followed Edward's own foray into financial independence when in the 1990s he decided to strike out on his own with a television production company called Ardent Productions. Edward wanted to make a name for himself outside of his royal title, but his crew was caught attempting to film William during his first week at St. Andrews, violating a media agreement that protected the young prince's privacy. This family doesn't seem very supportive of each other. Ardent's productions were underwhelming. Critics panned the content as bland and outdated. By 2002, it was clear that Ardent was a financial failure. Edward eventually stepped down and Ardent quietly dissolved in 2009. The press savaged Edward for overstepping and capitalizing on his royal status. Palace insiders whispered that Edward had embarrassed the Queen, just like Sophie would a year later. After the media blowback, Edward and Sophie gave up their private careers and ambitions and focused on safe, soft-duty royal work. They're now praised for being low-key and dutiful, but only because they've stopped trying to be independent. The ambition has been surgically removed. This all ties back to a couple of videos I covered last year. The Cult of the Heir. You should check those out too. In the British royal system, only one person gets to inherit all the money, and only one person is allowed to shine: the heir. Everyone else must orbit quietly around him. If you outshine him, you're out. If you're more popular, you're punished, because if a spare earns their own money, they become less pliable and potentially more popular, which is dangerous for the heir. It's why Harry had to go. Meanwhile, whatever the heir does, whether it's considered a success or a failure, he gets rewarded. He can flip from one passion project to another like a dilettante butterfly with nothing to show for any of them and still get rewarded. No matter what, William will get his 25 million pounds a year from the Duchy of Cornwall. He can bungle causes, disappear for weeks, or give speeches no one hears and still cash the check. The sovereign grant, it flows through the monarch. The Duchy of Cornwall, reserved for the Prince of Wales, not his siblings. The Duchy of Lancaster, the monarch's private estate, not shared. The inheritance, when Prince Philip died, everything went to the Queen, and with her own inheritance onto Charles, bypassing Andrew, Edward, and Anne. Because in the cult of the heir, only the heir is trusted. Only the heir is valuable. The so-called working royals are often little more than glorified state mascots expected to perform ceremonial duties while relying on palatial handouts and backroom deals. It's also why Kate, once trotted out as the monarchy's saving grace, may now be experiencing a quiet financial sidelining. The Middleton's finances are once again back in the news. Last week, this little snippet appeared in the paper, almost with a whisper, of Pippa and her supposed billionaire husband's financial woes. Apparently their Buckleberry project isn't doing too good, with James being over £800,000 in debt. And what happened to the event space business? Well, not much seems to be going on there either. Why do I get the feeling that this family, even after being brutally exposed for pretending to be wealthy, is still fully committed to keeping up the charade of wealth in the hopes that something eventually pans out? So while the royals, along with their foot soldiers in the press, try to destroy the rogue spares, heirs, they remind the remaining ones that we hold all the cards. But the Telegraph's quiet little bombshell this week shines a harsh light on just how mediocre the senior royals have become. Now that it's painfully obvious that William and Kate are floundering in the charisma department, suddenly we're being told that Charles never really planned to slim down the monarchy after all. Enter the new secret weapons, Beatrice and Eugenie. And of course, Sophie is dusted off once again. Just last week, William and Sophie appeared together at an agricultural event in Cornwall. The press dubbed them a power duo. And where was Kate? Nowhere to be seen. The palace circular continues to show no upcoming engagements, but then she'll turn up unannounced at the museum. It screams no coordination and total chaos behind the scenes. And of course, the press rushed to point out that Kate was repeating an outfit. This is the same press that Kensington Palace reportedly instructed not to focus on her wardrobe anymore. So why mention it? Because they need to explain it away. They need to justify why the Princess of Wales, once the fashion centerpiece of every engagement, is now recycling decade-old outfits. It's starting to look more like a financial clampdown. Knowing William, petty, calculating, and vindictive as ever, it wouldn't come as the slightest surprise if he's yanked the financial rug out from under Kate purely out of spite. This week, the Daily Beast trotted out the tired old threat that William plans to strip the Sussex children of their HRH titles. Not this again, because folks, as you know, nothing says global statesman and most popular royal like sticking it to a couple of toddlers. What is wrong with this guy? Each carefully leaked story, clearly sanctioned by William himself, only reinforces the creeping suspicion that Kate's disappearance wasn't just about illness or exhaustion. It feels increasingly likely that William's infamous temper played a role. And judging by the glacial chill radiating between the two on the balcony tells me that this isn't over. The look on his face says it all. You may have won this time. You may have ruined my plans, but trust me, in the end, you will pay. And whatever that means for Kate and the spares can't be good. The media, ever obedient, already appears to be laying the groundwork for its next scapegoat, the youngest Wales child. Subtly framed as the next bête noire of the firm, the cycle continues, one sibling discarded to prop up another. And so it falls to Kate. The question is, will she protect the crown or protect her children? Because in the House of Windsor, loyalty to one requires sacrificing the other.